Hey everyone, my name is Kendall Jackson, and I did my project on standardized testing, whether it is good or bad. So let me get started with my presentation. So the title of it is Standardized Testing, Good or Bad? And I'm an early childhood education major, and I'm a junior, and I'm in my first block of my teaching program here at West Georgia. The background introduction to my topic is that testing plays a major role in all students' schooling experiences, and it'll determine many different aspects in their life when they go through school. I personally always wondered how testing worked and how and why people did it and what was the purpose of it. And I want to know why teachers did it, and I wanted to know what they thought about it, if they liked it or if they didn't like it. My research topic that I ended up choosing was, how necessary is it for schools to give tests or exams to students in the first place? Why or why not? So for my literature review on an outside source that I found about it, it says that there's pros and cons to standardized testing. It depends on the view that you look at it and your position on it, because it can provide ways to judge if a student has mastered a topic or if they haven't and they still need help on it. It can also be considered unfair. This is a con to it because it'll judge the whole school and the class, not just the individual student. So it's more of like a statistic that higher up people can use to compare it to other students in different schools or even other countries. The gap in this would be that there's different perspectives. There's not a one right or wrong answer to it. It just depends on your perspective and your view and what you believe. In my study, I heard different viewpoints at different levels. I did get mostly positive things from the two people that I interviewed, but they did give me a few negatives. So my problem statement is that testing has pros and cons, and there are correct answers for both sides. Neither one is right, neither one is wrong. Just depends on what you want to believe. The problem I'm trying to address is, why do teachers think the way they do about testing, whether it be for testing or against testing? The purpose of my study that I'm doing is that I personally just wanted to learn more about the motives behind testing, because you get tested all your life throughout school, and I personally don't like testing because I don't think it tells what I do best, and it doesn't tell what I know best, because I'm not a good test taker. Never have been. It makes me nervous, but I honestly wanted to see the educators' opinions on it to see what they thought about it. So my research questions that I used during my interview with my two people that I did was, are ACT, SAT, CRCT, and milestone scores an accurate way to determine a student's academic ability? Do tests and final exams judge students' understanding and knowledge of the course, or just memorization skills? Are tests more effective in certain subjects, like, for example, math or science or history, like that? So my research site was, I interviewed these people both over Zoom calls because of COVID right now. It was just the easiest and the way that we could both get on there. And my two research participants that I got for my project was an elementary school teacher that teaches in Coweta County and the director of curriculum for Coweta County schools. So my data collection that I found. So I interviewed an elementary school teacher in Coweta County and the director of curriculum for Coweta County. I asked them both the same questions so that I could see how their views differed from one another, being on different levels of education. I believe the two different point of views gave me an insight as to how teachers think differently than the director of programming, which is higher up in the education field and system, because they have different thought processes. So, the elementary school teacher that I interviewed, she was more understanding of the stress and anxiety that tests cause with students because she dealt with them more directly than the director of programming did. The director of programming, they could go in and they could visit the schools, but they're not in the classroom with the students every single day. She also used testing to help her assess where each of her students were in her class if they mastered the objectives they were supposed to. And that's the good positive to testing, is you can figure out where they're at, but then again, it could be just because they're not a strong test taker. I think that testing at this level is viewed by the teacher to see how much they learned and how much they remembered from when they were taught. And this is how teachers view it, and they have a more close insight look at students and how testing directly affects them. So the director of programming, she viewed testing in a more broad way because, she is higher up in the system, so she doesn't just have one group of kids to look at. She looks at multiple groups of kids. She looked at each group of kids when they were testing to see how well a school was doing compared to another one. And then she also thought that testing was a way to find out specific information about the students, and this is a good way to target information if you want to find out a certain thing about students or a certain thing about testing. You can do that by looking specifically at that and testing for it. So some conclusions that I drew. The elementary school teacher was more relatable to the child's thoughts and feelings about testing, and they wanted to use testing for their own students' purposes, not for the purpose of the whole school, and to get statistics out of it. But the director of programming wanted what was best for the overall appearance and reputation of the school. And she wanted to use testing as a way to distinguish different groups of people, like high, low, and like different classes. Like different schools are ranked differently. That's what she wanted to use it as. So, the limitations and future research. Both educators I interviewed believed that testing was good for the students, in a way. But they also saw that testing could cause problems for students as well, because there is the idea that testing is not fair because students don't remember it well, like me. I just don't test well, so I don't particularly show what I know on every single test I take because I get stressed out and I get anxious. So my mind goes different places and I don't remember everything that I did learn, even though I already know it. And I use the prosandcons.org for my outside resource, and I have it stated in my PowerPoint. But that's all for my presentation, but I just wanted to say again that there's not a right or wrong answer about testing, and I wanted to do my project to find out how different types of teachers thought about testing and how they thought testing could help. And like I said, the actual teacher in the classroom, they use it to help their students. And I believe that's how it should be used for. Now, testing, like on the higher levels, like SAT and all that, like to get into college, like to me, that's not as fair because that's not specifically what you just learned, and that can be over years, and your brain doesn't remember all that stuff necessarily. It will remember some of it, but not it. You have to study to be able to remember it, and that's why I believe that testing it's a great thing, but it's also a very stressful thing, and it should be used in moderation. So, thank you so much for listening to my presentation, and again, I'm Kendall Jackson, and if you have any questions, just let me know, and thank you so much. Bye!